What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Innovators Den. I am formerly known as Hashtag. Please make sure you follow us at the Innovators Den on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram,
Spotify,
TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, Apple
Podcasts. And I'm here with
Steve-O Business, and we got a very, very special guest. We have Abiel Ruiz here.
Ruiz.
Well, look, yeah, I know, but what's up, man? This guy has inspired many.
Thank you for having me.
And, we appreciate you coming on. We've been looking at your work and seeing your work as you've been transitioning all these years as a creative, as a designer, and as a photographer and visual artist, at the end of the day. So, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm sort of happy to be here. When I say sort of, it's because I lived in New York for 30 years, and now my life outside of New York is different. And, I'm not crazy about the cold weather. But right now it's nice, thankfully. I'm happy to be here. See you guys. It's been a minute. Yeah, I'm here.
Where it all started, Abiel, where it all started, like, your creativity. A lot of people don't know where it started. They just saw the highlight of you being you, but where did it all started for you as far as being a creative? And then, we take it from there.
Sure. It goes back to when I was a kid, I guess, because in school, I always excelled when it came to art. And early on, I had a pretty good idea of sort of like where I wanted to go as far as my direction.
Right.
And I always knew it was going to be something artistic, but also like technology, because I was into like computers and stuff like that. So when I went off to college, I pursued graphic design.
Right.
So that's kind of, and I was doing like scribbling on the tables and like always doing graffiti since I was a young kid.
Right.
And that's kind of like what set me off. And when I turned 16 or so, I got my first airbrush kit just because I wanted to put this stuff on my own clothes.
Right.
And that sort of jump-started my whole journey. I think everything that I wound up doing later on in life came from that beginning.
that one kit.
Yeah. I was always inspired by, I think, colors. I have a thing for like colors and
putting them together.
I still remember like being in like junior high school and elementary school and learning about like complementary colors and colors that make sense together and like all this stuff, and it always stuck with me. And when I started doing graffiti, like I always implemented a lot of good colors, and that eventually translated into like me designing collections and things of that nature, and also my art.
And you can see that like when you look at your things that you've designed, your designs.
Right.
You can see like the colors, even like in your Instagram page.
Yeah.
Everything is like.
Yeah, I think that's been a huge strong suit for my brand. I'm sure we're going to touch on a lot of things, but for Vie Riche, one of the things that's always set us apart has been our color stories. Like we've always had really unique color stories, really unique art, and I think that's been the strong suit of the brand since the beginning.
And your latest collection, basically did use pastel colors for winter colors. Usually that's not in the market, but you guys have a strong
that's part of the
hold on the market. You guys, they accept your brand.
100%. We've been doing that since very early on, and we've always sort of had a little bit of a disruptive vision for the brand, and we always kind of try to not go against the grain as far as like not following trends, but we try to be a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to our market. And like one of the things that we always observed was that using lighter colors in the wintertime made our brand stand out on the shelves next to these other brands, because everybody was on the like earth tones and like Christmas colors or Halloween colors or whatever. Right. And then here we are using like mints and teals and set like kind of like what I'm wearing now.
Right.
And it's like as soon as you come into the store, everything else is dark, and then you see like our vignette, and it's like we're standing out. But that worked in our favor a lot of times. Like we experimented that with our previous brand like many years ago, and like we kind of followed it through into our newer project, which is not so new now. We just made 10 years.
Right. But you already talking about 10 years. Let's take it back to where the fashion started for you. And let's highlight that, because it's important for the people who are watching. You started somewhere, right? And
yeah, of course.
What led you to go into the fashion and,
Yeah, it's something that sort of happened by happenstance. And it came from me working with Fausto, who you guys had on the podcast not too long ago. We got introduced to some friends. He was looking for airbrushing was kind of hot at the time. A lot of people were like getting the custom T-shirts done and things of that nature. And I was just doing it from home, and I had a regular job at the time. And then we got introduced through some mutual friends. You were kind of like part of that introduction mix because my best friend used to go to school with him. And we got introduced, and I quit my job, and I got together with him, and we started like a little business venture at the time.
That's when entrepreneurship started for you guys.
I was 18, and I kind of just took the plunge, and I was like, I'm gonna live off my art.
Yeah. I remember it was like a process. You guys was trying to figure out every process to create a brand, not just
that came about a year and some change down the line. Because Fausto and I started we had like a storefront kind of situation, and it was great for a few months, but we depended from the sales from a high school that was close by, Lima High School.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when school was out, when school was out, like our business dwindled.
Right.
So then we decided to go our separate ways for a bit. And I kept airbrushing. He went on to do other things. And then like a year and a half later, he approached me. He was like, hey, I got this idea I want to talk to you about. The idea came from him.
Right.
I was, obviously I was already airbrushing on clothes, but I didn't have I wasn't keen on like starting a brand.
Right.
Because it would have just been like a graffiti brand, and that was not like, that wasn't my angle really. But he came with the idea, and we got together and created what La Vie at the time. Mm-hmm. That was around 2004.
Right.
And that was we knew nothing about fashion at that time. He had an idea to start a brand. I was obviously, I went to school for graphic arts, so like Photoshop and Illustrator were my thing, and we were us two with two other people, with Angie and
working
Danny.
It out, figuring it out.
Yeah, we were just trying to figure it out, and we learned a lot of stuff along the way. By the time we put out our first like actual collection,
like 2 years later.
Yeah, it was like 2-3 years later, and then eventually in 2018, I'm sorry, no, not 2018, I'm sorry, 2008, going way back. We wound up getting a partnership with some older Indian guys that were just looking for like an opportunity to start a brand.
Right.
And that's kind of like where our real journey started, of us learning the business like the real way. We were pretty much winging it for the first 3 years, and it was a lot of disasters. Like we threw away a lot of money. Like it was crazy.
And while that was happening, when it really started, then you had to like, I remember you took like the step forward to like have to wear multiple hats as an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah.
And I remember then you started specializing in photography, fashion photography, because that was what you was doing, right? So
yeah. And that stemmed from us having a brand. It was. I've always been one of those people that I don't like to depend too much on other people to get things done.
Right.
And I actually picked up a camera because we needed photos for
your brand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I had taken a photography course in school, but at that time, I couldn't afford to get a camera.
Yeah.
But then eventually, once we got the partnership and like, I went and picked up a camera. I was like,
you invested into yourself, though.
Exactly.
So. And
I picked up a camera and kind of like just went to the YouTube school, learned a lot of stuff about doing photography, and I just, I lo foque it, how they say. I just started and I just quickly grew passionate about shooting models and like creating just art through photography now, instead of just airbrushing or even designing clothing. It was sort of things that sort of went hand in hand, and I quickly excelled with photography. And it for a minute there, it took precedence.
Right.
I was doing it professionally. I was taking on gigs. I shot a few like brand campaigns and stuff like that. 2013, our first brand kind of hit a brick wall. We just didn't have the right partnership situation, and we ran into a lot of financial hurdles that we just couldn't jump over.
Right.
And at that time, I was going to pursue fashion photography full time.
Right.
But what happened was we knew these two guys that like really believed in our talent with the fashion business, and they originally wanted us to continue our brand with them, but our previous partners didn't want to let go of the IP, the name. So they were like, look, we believe in you guys so much, we're willing to just start a new brand with you guys.
Oh, dope.
So that's when Vie Riche came about.
I was with Maxim, right?
No, it was before Maxim. We started that with these other two guys named Josh and Anthony.
Got it.
Shout out to them.
Got it. They were at the Empire, if I'm not mistaken, Empire State Building?
They weren't in the Empire State Building. No, at that time, They were working with this guy named Gerard Adams. A lot of people might know him. He's actually pretty influential. He has started an e-com business, and he also started a digital. It was like a blog of some sort that he a few years later he wound up selling for like a substantial amount of money, and that became kind of like his success story. But we sort of met like through that situation. It was like mutual friends that we had. That's when we decided to start a new brand, and our mission with this brand was to fill the void in the market and do everything that we did wrong with our previous brand.
Right.
Just do it
that
right.
was your school, right?
Yeah.
Like you guys,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so we kind of hit the ground running because, you know, by the time we started this new project, we already had all these relationships with the stores that we had created with the previous brand, and we knew all the ins and outs at this point because we had dealt with like all the different sides of the business,
right.
From sourcing to selling to marketing to logistics. Like we kind of knew all the ins and outs. So
Right. You even went to China, right?
yeah,
That
my
was
first
a different,
time.
like culture shock, like
Oh yeah.
seeing, okay, this is where our fashion
it
comes
was-
from, right?
That was a whole other world. My first time going was in 2011 with my Indian partner at the time.
Right.
And man, that was like, that opened my eyes to so many things. And China is actually a huge source of my inspiration for designing clothing, believe it or not.
That's
A
great.
lot of people might not know that, but like
Right.
my trips to China are like when the pandemic hit and I couldn't go to China for like 3 years,
Yeah.
that was difficult because the market out there is so ahead of its time, or ahead of our time, I would say. Like a lot of fashion here, a lot of people don't know this, but China gets a lot of fashion before the US gets it.
Right.
Because they're producing a lot of things for a lot of brands, a lot of like the known brands,
So they get the
months in
latest,
advance.
Yeah.
the latest fabric technology. they got.
Everything. So, for example, I'm actually going on Friday. When I go there now, everything that's going to be out on the floor that you'll be able to get in the market is stuff that's going to be releasing next year here in the States.
Gotcha.
So that's why a lot of the stuff that we've put out has come from inspiration that I got from China. It's kept us ahead of the curve as a brand because I got so much inspiration from going on these trips. And
awesome.
you know, we've been first to market with a lot of things. Years back, like when we did the whole like cartoony swag.
Yeah.
No,
Like,
you
we
guys
brought that to
use,
market.
And even bring it back
neoprene
to-
as one of the
Yeah.
fabrics that were
Yeah.
ahead before
Oh
Alexander
yeah,
went.
we had a really good run with
I'm
that.
aware.
That yellow collection you guys had too. It was almost bringing it back, and now I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
What's what do you call this? Like
Which one?
the sweaters, the yellow sweaters,
The cardigans?
cardigans. Yeah, the cardigans. The
Yeah,
yellow
we did
cardigans.
that. Eons.
Yeah, and now they're coming back
Yeah.
out, and it's like
Yeah, they're about to have a moment.
Yeah, so
So just to recap, it went from like being a creative, graffiti, doing photography, doing airbrushes, and now you building this business besides fashion, became a creative director and a project manager for yourself. After that, you know, you took a transition and you went to DR. How
Yeah.
was that? You know, how was that experience going from living in New York and then
Yeah, absolutely.
and what made you make that transition?
So after we started the brand in 2013, I think it was about 9-10 months later, we wound up partnering with this company called Maxima, who was kind of at the forefront of like urban fashion here. And
Oh, but this is where you did Pyramid, right?
Yes.
You collaborated
Yeah, yeah.
with a brand
yeah,
called.
and I think this was a sort of an important step in my journey because Maxima was sort of like school for me. That situation, which we were in a partnership with them for about 3.5 years, I learned so many invaluable things working there, and the experience that I gained there, like really, really helped me after we moved on from there to do a lot of things the right way, and I just learned so much. Actually, a lot of the things that changed my life after that came from me having taken a lot of China trips with the owner of that company, and just learning the ropes with a lot of things with how manufacturers work, how things in the market work out there in China.
like tech packs and fabric sourcing.
A whole bunch
all
of
that
things.
stuff.
But just like in general, how things sort of work on that side of the world.
Right.
Because he lived there for many years and he also spoke the language.
Oh.
So me taking these trips with him were like different than like the trips that I took prior to being
He's somebody who was cultured in their
Yeah.
in their environment.
right. So it was a different learning experience when I went with him.
Right.
And while I was there at Maxima, I wound up becoming the design director for the company.
So they had like, wait, so you brought in a brand with those the ones that you built, but they also had other brands under the same house.
Yeah.
And you was able to design for those brands too?
Right. So it was basically a fashion house that housed numerous brands. We were one of many in the beginning. When we first joined the company, there were about 9 brands there, if I remember correctly. But within like the first year and a half, a bunch of those brands got phased out. And then only 3 brands remained, which was Vie Riche, Black Pyramid, which they got the license for that about a year.
That was a brand that Chris
Brown's
was
line.
working with?
Yeah.
Or?
It was Chris Brown's line. And we wound up getting the license for that about a year into us being partners with the company. And when that opportunity came about, since a lot of the brands got phased out, I had already started working with one of the other brands, which is called Hudson. At the time,
They used to make coats, jackets, and stuff.
But they turned into like
a brand.
Like they started doing a bunch of urban sportswear and stuff, and they needed design help. So the owner sat me down. I was getting ready to move to LA at the time because I was going to transition out there to pursue some other things. But he was like, "Hey man, I got some opportunities here, and I could use your expertise to help us with some of the other brands." So the Chris Brown thing was sort of brewing up at the time, and I took the opportunity and I was like, you know what, let me kind of see. I felt like some sort of calling. And I wound up staying for another maybe 2 years. So then I wound up, when the whole Chris Brown thing came about, they had the first meeting in LA. I was actually in LA when that happened. My partner at the time called me. He was like, hey, don't leave because we have a meeting in a couple of days and I want you to come. So we wound up meeting Chris Brown at the studio out there in LA. And we had the first sort of like brainstorm meeting to sort of lay out like what the brand was supposed to look like. The brand
aesthetic and the DNA and stuff.
And from there we literally took a trip to China from LA, and we were out there for about 3 weeks developing the whole first 2 collections. And that was the beginning of that, and we took the license for the brand and we quickly grew that. Within like 18 months the brand was doing like over like $10 million a year. So that was super cool. 2017 around there, I wound up deciding to finally leave to LA. I felt like I kind of like my situation there sort of ran its course. You
went to DR, right?
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
I decided to move to LA. I was spending a lot of time out there. I was out there like every other month.
Right.
Where I was working with Chris, and I was also working on some other personal things that I was looking to pursue. I was looking to get into the tech.
There was an app too that you was working on.
I was developing an app. So I went there to pursue some new opportunities with my art as well. So then as soon as I moved to LA, we wound up like our partnership with Maxima, that dissolved, and we moved on to partner up with some other people. And I moved to LA and I met who's now my wife, like as soon as I moved to LA.
Wow.
And that's sort of what changed my entire course after that, because when I met her, about 6, 7, 8 months later, we wound up going to DR because she wanted to meet my family. And when we went back to DR, my parents had moved back like a year or something prior to that. So we went to DR. She went to visit for the first time. She fell in love with the country. And
Is she Dominican?
No, she's Guatemalan.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. She's Guatemalan, born and raised in LA.
Got it.
And when we went to DR, she was like, just her eyes opened.
This is paradise.
Yeah. And at the time I was like obviously doing most of my work remote, and she had dove into like designing websites and stuff. So most of our stuff was, we worked from our computers. Yeah. Right. So when we started looking at like the living expenses, we went from paying $4,000 at a house in LA to paying $400 for a penthouse apartment in DR. You can imagine how life-changing that could be,
of course.
Right? And now you live in a certain lifestyle.
That's $3,600
in a different budget.
Saving $3,600.
Yeah, that's mad.
Aside from all the other living expenses that you incur living in LA, like paying a car note, traveling,
insurance, car insurance,
everything, right? So all of a sudden we're saving thousands of dollars per month and living somewhere where for us it was like a positive change, like as far as quality of living. I mean, LA was a step in the right direction for me because I got tired of living in New York. No offense to all my New Yorkers. A lot of my friends are still here. I started traveling a lot after I turned 30, and the more I traveled, the more I realized that New York just wasn't it. Like, I noticed how much like the weather was affecting me, and just like the very monotonous lifestyle here in New York was just not for me. I wanted to be more outdoors. I started cycling at the time.
Yeah, you started cycling.
Yeah.
You even started a brand.
Right. And like cycling was, a lot of health benefits. And it wasn't something I could do all year round here because of the weather.
Right.
Yeah.
So going to LA for me was like a very positive change in that aspect. And, I started hiking. I was like cycling all year round. So it was a step in the right direction. But the finances weren't making sense at that time.
LA is crazy expensive.
Yeah. I was making okay money, but at the end of the day, it was getting consumed by our living expenses.
Yes.
Right.
So when, this thing with DR, we were like, we didn't think about it too much. My family's there. She wanted sort of like a change for her personal life. And when we looked into the figures, we were just like, this just makes a lot of sense right now. Let's not overthink it. We can always come back. And actually, initially, we were gonna do like the bi-coastal thing. But after we made the plunge and we moved, a few months in, we're just like, what's the point of going back to LA? We're just gonna be like spending all this extra money, having a place there, having a place here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we just like left everything behind pretty much.
That's
and just
crazy. Most people wouldn't do that.
The plunge.
yeah. And that first year after we moved was like bliss, bro. Like we were.
Y'all will go hiking in the beautiful paradise of a private beach.
Yeah, it was like living a vacation the whole time, and we had certain commodities that we could.
Airbnb you started doing at that time.
We jumped on that maybe about a year after we moved there. Since we started saving so much money, we started traveling a lot and we started looking into. So when we moved out of our first apartment that we lived at in DR, we moved into our second apartment. We started looking at properties because we had to move, and then we were like, you know what? It might make sense for us to just buy something because the prices are so affordable there, and that opened up like this whole it opened up our minds as far as like investing into real estate in DR. So we quickly started doing that because we had money left over, and we got into a couple of apartments out there, and that sort of started our like real estate journey in DR, and that was life changing for us because here, like for you to think about real estate is like $500,000 and up. You know what I'm saying? But like DR, you could buy an apartment for like
100,000
or less. We wound up buying 2 apartments a couple years back for like $60,000, bro.
Wow.
And like we flipped them for like double.
Yeah.
Like a year and a half into, and we bought them in Blueprint. That's something that like a lot of people don't know.
Right.
Like
could buy
you don't need a ton of money to invest into real estate and make a profit. The flipping scheme the flipping concept in DR, you can buy into a project in Blueprint and you're paying minimal because it typically only requires about 20% up front.
Yeah, you pay like
and then you're paying another 20 or 30% of whatever it's worth throughout the interim of the construction. So you're only out of pocket, X amount of money. And then if you just do that for about a year and a half, you put it back on the market. Now all of a sudden you have surplus on this property that, even though let's say let's say it cost $100,000 when you got it, a year and a half in, you might have paid $30,000 out of pocket. But then you put it back on the market and you sell it for $30,000 more. Now you get your $30,000 back, and you just got another surplus for $30K. So all you did was put money aside, and you just made 100% profit on a property you don't even need to own.
You need the mindset though to see like that, right?
Well, you need
the education and the information.
Exactly, having the information.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people are not even aware of that.
A lot of people are not aware of that.
I started looking because I mentioned to you before we started the show that I got stuck out there. I was stuck out there for like. Well,
Right.
I was stuck out there for a little bit in DR, and I was like, yo, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is crazy. Like, these homes are incredible. Like, right by the beach, right across from El Malecón in Puerto Plata. And I was like, this is insane.
That's crazy.
I'm going to go back to New York and stay in my
stack
apartment.
up to get an apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
So the lifestyle change was very impactful for you.
Super.
Because not only you did a lifestyle change, but then you was able to partner with your partner and invest. And, a lot of people don't even think about lifestyle like that, but you guys downsized to then live how most people can't because you guys downsized.
It's also having that mindset. She's able to kind of like see the same vision that you
100%.
So.
And had we not moved to DR, we probably wouldn't have known this. And, God knows what we would have done. But for us, it was like,
click light bulb.
Yeah,
That's innovators.
Not only that, after we moved to DR, because a lot of I had resources in China, we got into a drop shipping business. And I won't get into the specifics of that because that's another story. But throughout the time that we were in DR, not only did we manage to save a ton of money, but we managed to make more money after we moved to DR. Our income like tripled within the first year of living there. So now you can imagine us saving so much money and then having this influx of money. You know, that's what enabled us to be able to start these investments. And then that sort of progressed into like us eventually opening up our spa, Orion Wellness.
Yeah, there's a spa, Orion, right? Orion Wellness. The aesthetic is so beautiful. It looks calming as soon as you look at the place. The aesthetics is beautiful. And you guys curated that together as far as the decor, the interior design.
Yeah, that
like even the door, like...
yeah, it's like the aesthetic is crazy.
I'm working on a ton of things, so I don't know how deep we want to dive into, like, because each little thing has sort of like his own story.
Well, the thing is, for me, I want people to get is that from an idea and you coming in and helping somebody else who had an idea, you build a career, bro. And a lot of people see their life as, I have to go to school. Not that don't go to school, but just having an idea or helping your friend get to that next level because he has an idea might take you and create a whole career for yourself.
Yeah,
it's also fear. Like, you know, like you went against fear, right? Because it's fearful not to go the career route, right? So when you become an entrepreneur, you're literally forced to like figure it out.
But he made a career for himself.
But I'm saying like he went against fear because if you, follow traditional footsteps, it's like go to school, find a 9-to-5, and this is.
So he didn't know he was like an entrepreneur until he like he was forced to be one, right? And then getting in a managerial role and a creative director, project manager, you was able to implement those skills that you learned building a business from an idea, and then put it into your intimate life and your family life.
100%.
And you was able to help scale that, and that's why it's important that you're on this show. Because you're an innovator.
Can you speak about those projects that you were saying that you're touching on a lot of different projects? Can you speak on some of them?
Oh man, I have so many.
Well, highlight the cycling, because a lot of people they see it's a sport, but it's a lifestyle too, and it's a health and wellness lifestyle. Can you highlight that? Because you were so inspired that you ended up building like a brand around it, right? From the gear to the actual bike. You did.
And how often do you cycle? Because you seem to.
I mean,
How far you've done?
I'm not like
20 miles.
I'm not a professional cyclist by any means.
No, it's a hobby. We understand.
It's something that I took on as a hobby back in like 2015, and it was a very life-changing thing for me. Cycling, obviously, aside from the health benefits, there's a social aspect of it that for me, a lot of the things that actually took place in my life came from me meeting people in the cycling community. For my spa, for example, the reason why our spa exists today is because we rented one of our Airbnb apartments to who is now our chiropractor. And initially the idea stemmed from him expressing to us that where he was practicing, he wasn't happy. And he wanted to leave and sort of do his own thing, but he didn't want to start a business from scratch. He proposed to us that if we were willing to sort of like create a working situation for him, we can sort of go like 50-50 on the business. Wow. And he would basically do all the work, all the chiropractic work. So at the time we were sort of not ready for something like that. We had other ideas that we were thinking about doing. And we wound up reselling one of the apartments we invested into. And then, we had a little bit of surplus money, and we were like, you know what, this might be something that's lucrative, that's sort of like low energy for us, that we don't have to put a lot of time and effort into, that could be a decent amount of passive income. So when we looked at the numbers and everything, it was like, okay, this makes sense. So we started looking for locations, like for a small office, just so he can work. And we wound up finding this house that was like abandoned for years. And the owners of that house wanted to do a little bit of remodeling to put it up for commercial use. So the location was like a prime location. It was like right in the heart of the city. And the price was right because the house needed help. So it came in at a really good price. So when we saw that opportunity, we were like, okay, this is going to entail a bigger investment, but we saw a much bigger opportunity there. So then that's when the idea sort of evolved into us creating like a wellness place.
And a brand, like it's a whole brand in itself.
Yeah. So we've traveled a lot. And one of the things that DR lacked for us was like a place you can go to relax. Like, we've been to a lot of amazing experiences in like Bali, Turkey, Greece, South America. And in DR, we just had nothing. Like when you wanted a massage, you got to go to like a aesthetic or a resort, which is really far from us. Right. But in Santiago, all we had was like the beauty places. Mm-hmm. And it was like a half-ass experience. And we're all about experiences. So when this whole idea started evolving, we were like, you know what, we're going to create something that's like our vibe and like what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And we felt like people would resonate with it. And we had a lot of conviction in that. And a lot of the aesthetic ideas that we got were from these trips that we took to Bali, to South America, the Amazon, which we visited a couple, like prior to us opening Orion. Mm-hmm. That's why our door has plants inside of it. Yeah, right. And it's very unique. And a lot of people like when they see the images online, they're like, what is this place?
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh shit. Like,
the whole creative aspect of just design and creativity as he learned in his career, and he applied it to another business.
And it's also getting perspective, because when you don't travel, you don't get
know better. You don't know what you don't know.
I feel like that's what happens when you mention like New York, like where you're done with it, because once you travel outside of New York and Europe and all these different countries, you go to Colombia a lot, and once you experience all that, like, why would you want to come back?
No, you got so much perspective when you travel, because you're exposed to so many different cultures and different things. As a creative, for me, traveling is essential. Like, that's what keeps me, like, every time I take a trip, I come back inspired, you know?
Yeah.
So talking about inspired, right now, if we could give a photographer, a creative designer, a creative entrepreneur, what advice would you give that person who's looking, who just need that advice? What's a couple of advice that you would give them to start if they wanted to be an entrepreneur or start in the creative space?
There's so many things that could be said, right? Like, and being a creative is very broad. There's so many ways you can go. There's a million ways to skin that cat. But I think the most important thing is, and it's like one of the key elements that my wife and I have that I think is what set us apart, is that we're very resourceful. I think that's like the main key thing, because you can have a million ideas, but if you're not resourceful,
you got to work with what you got to make it happen.
Yeah, and we live in an age where everything's there for you. Like the internet.
Look for it.
A lot of the resources that I found, and what we can go back to talking about the cycling thing, because I actually found my factory through AliExpress.
Right.
And like, a lot of people don't, like, if you want to start a brand, you can go on AliExpress and find a supplier that's going to give you low minimums. Right. A lot of people don't know that. And
it's just the lack of, like,
perspective and the lack of knowledge. Right. But that's one of the things that I think has enabled us to do so many things. And I'll quickly touch on all the things that I'm working on at the moment, because I think I've sort of reached a place in my career where now I'm like really just honing in on creating cool shit. Now it's not so much so like before when we first started a brand, it was like, all right, we want to do a brand because we want to create wealth, right? And we want to do this for the money. But I've kind of reached a point in life where like the wealth part is not my driving force anymore. And the driving force for me is creating cool things selfishly for myself, but then also for other people that I think also may be able to appreciate these things and also benefit from these things.
We have. I mean, I would say through your work, you have impacted a lot of people, especially us. Yeah. You know what I mean? Through your work. So,
appreciate that.
We always make sure that we know where it came from, and that's why we're here to give you your flowers and make sure that you're on the Innovators Den.
Can you touch back on the cycling? Like you would go into that.
The cycling thing was something that I didn't. It also wasn't something that I kind of planned. After I moved to DR, specifically during the pandemic, I've always been into aesthetics, obviously, because I'm into fashion. So one of the struggles that I had with cycling was that to look cool and have the right cycling kits, you got to spend a lot of money. It's a very expensive sport.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't want to wear the same thing all the time because I'm very diverse. Like I could look one way one day and then the next day I want to look different. And to do that with cycling becomes very expensive if you're buying into the IT brands that are like, the brands that give you the quality and the look that somebody like me would be looking for. So since I've been in the manufacturing side for so long, when I would see the ticket on these brands, I'm like, I appreciate the design and the quality, but I know how much this costs to make. And for me to spend $200 on a single jersey and $300 on a pair of bibs, it's like a $500 outfit. If I want to have 10 different outfits, that's like $5,000. You know what I mean? So, and on the other side of things, if I wanted the money that I actually was willing to spend, you can find anything that was like in line with the way that I wanted to look. So that's when I went on AliExpress and I started looking for like an opportunity to create my own custom stuff for myself. So I found this one factory that basically does printables for cycling jerseys. And the first factory that I tested wasn't like, the quality wasn't up to par with what I was looking for. But then I found this other factory that was closer to there. They were like 70% of the way there. So I started working with them, started sampling some stuff for myself. And over time, they got better and better, to the point where I was like, okay, I can actually offer this out to the, to the market. Yeah. And I think people would appreciate it. So I have a really good friend of mine who lives here, and he was the first guy that I ever went road cycling with. And him and I, obviously, we talk about cycling all the time, and like we came up with the concept for the brand. It's called Cognitive, because cognitive short is cog, and that's like the
COG.
Yeah, so that's like the bike cog that's like in the front and the back.
So you did.
So it has like a double meaning.
Abbreviation
right.
of cognitive, but it's also cog is
exactly
the actual cog of the bike.
Exactly. So it had the double meaning. So we thought it'd be a cool name. So during the pandemic, I came up with that, and then we wound up putting a website together. We started offering the product to the public, but we didn't really treat it as a business. For me, it's sort of been a creative outlet for me and a way for me to dress myself in the cycling business. In the cycling world. Now, what happened was during the pandemic also, I've gone through a few different bikes, and I wound up finding a factory that's been manufacturing bikes for like big companies for many years. They had like a lot of they had their own internal brand that is not well known, but they have 20 years of experience in the business. So
they know how to make.
Yeah. So the stuff is like really good quality. So on my last trip to China, which was earlier this year, I wound up getting a frame from them. And then also there was another Chinese company that launched an electronic group set for cycling. And I wanted to test it out to see if it's something that I can offer in DR to resell to people under my brand. So I've been doing that for the last 6-7 months. I've been testing. I put a bike together with all these components. And my idea is to sort of fill this void in the market because bikes have gotten really expensive over the last.
They're like $5,000-$10,000 for a
bike.
Dude,
that's like a mid-range entry-level bike.
They're like carbon fiber.
If you want to get a high-quality road bike, you're looking at $12,000, $13,000, $14,000.
That's crazy.
And for me, it's I get it, but
that's what they do in the Tour de France, right?
Yeah. If you want to go pro level, you got to spend that kind of money on a bike. And, I wanted...
It's a hobby.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring something to market that I can offer to people that can sort of sit in line with these high-grade bikes, but it's going to cost you a fraction of the price. Mm-hmm. So that I've been working on that for the last couple of months. And, I'm going back now to China to visit a couple of those factories. I'm also working on if you guys know me, I'm very much into watches. So Fausto and I are working on a concept that is not a watch brand, but we're creating a concept that's going to be a watch. And I think that's something that's going to be very interesting. I'm also doing some stuff on the real estate side out in China. I'm going to be distributing capsule homes. You guys might have seen them on Instagram because they become kind of viral the last couple of months. But I basically went to the biggest factory and they're giving me exclusivity to the whole DR.
That's dope.
Yeah, so we're going to be distributing those out in DR as well. So those are the main things that I'm sort of cooking up right now. I'm also going to be launching a new brand in the coming months.
And it just keeps going, guys.
Hey,
it just keeps going.
What else?
There's a few other things, but those are the main things that sort of have my focus right now. So
there you go. That's why you're an innovator and you're on the Innovators Den. So is there any website that people can go and see your work, or
sure
the cognitive website for the bike stuff?
I think if you look up my personal Instagram, I have all my other businesses listed on my bio. Abiel Ruiz, Abiel Ruiz.
Perfect.
On Instagram, and there I have links to. I have all the other Instagrams linked of all my businesses.
And what's the name of the bike company again? The cognitive.com?
It's cognitive cycling.cc.
Yeah.
And the Instagram is cognitive.cc, if I remember correctly. I'm having a brain fog right now.
But
it's all linked on my Instagram bio.
But it's been great to have you because, there's a lot of kids, a lot of people who's been wanting to be in the creative space, wanting to be entrepreneurs, and they get scared. We all get scared.
Yeah.
But you've pushed past that. You've been through all those trials and tribulations, and you have overcome. And now you're on the other side, and now you're more in a Zen place that you can create out your mind and live out your mind. And I think it's very impactful that you've done that for yourself and for your community, because you have impacted us.
Appreciate 100%. That.
So there you go. We got another episode. We got one of the coolest creative directors from New York, or now in DR. And thank you again for coming by.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah. I'll be happy to do this again sometime.
yeah, we'll do it again. For sure.
Oh, well, we're gonna go to that spa. We're gonna go to the spa. Everybody, check out. That's another one.
OrionWellness.rd.
RD.
Orion Wellness RD.
So make sure you follow, subscribe, like, share. It don't cost nothing. And we got
formerly known as hashtag
Steve-O Business, and we got the special
Abiel Ruiz.
Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Episode 1.